I spent the toughest 6 years with Kim Bobby. After achieving success, he finally no longer needed to pretend to be a loving husband with me. He brought back his first love on the day of our 6-year anniversary to hold a grand welcome for her. Their affair stirred up a lot of gossip, and I became the biggest joke in the city. Yet Kim Bobby shrugged it off, joking with his friends, "Now that I've endured the hardships, no matter how excessive I get, she won't leave me." He bet that I couldn't bear to give up the life I had now. But I wasn't the only one holding on to a past love. Later, when I was in the arms of my first love, too exhausted to lift a finger, Kim Bobby frantically insisted on taking me home. My first love pulled up his sleeves and elegantly knocked out one of Kim Bobby's front teeth, saying, "Now that your first love is back, what do you have to do with it?" I arrived 10 minutes late to Kim Bobby's celebration party. The door was ajar, and the room was noisy. I could hear his friends' hushed voices coming from inside. "Bringing Nora Alcott back to the country. Are you crazy? You're still thinking about her." I paused instinctively, holding a cake. Nora Alcott, rumored to be Kim Bobby's first love. I heard that back in the day, Kim Bobby nearly lost his life because of her. Through the gap in the door, I saw Kim Bobby tilt his head back and take a swig of his drink. His voice was hoarse as he scoffed. "I've never forgotten her. Never forgotten." Thinking back, I had been by Kim Bobby's side for a full 6 years. I accompanied him from nothing to his current worth of over 100 million. Everyone said Kim Bobby loved me dearly. He also said that once everything got better, he would proudly marry me. But after achieving success, Kim Bobby seemed too lazy to keep pretending. "If you haven't forgotten, why did you break up?" I asked coldly. My presence instantly silenced the room. After a 2-second pause, several people approached to smooth things over. "Sister-in-law, Kim Bobby had a few too many drinks. He was just joking." A close friend of Kim Bobby nudged him. "Quick, explain." Kim Bobby returned to his usual nonchalant self, slowly stepping forward to take the cake from me, and smiled. "What a coincidence. You heard it all." I didn't say anything, just silently watched him. Everyone said Kim Bobby was a well-known smiling tiger in the industry. No matter the situation, he could maintain that calm demeanor. So even after hearing those words with my own ears, his expression remained unchanged. "Why did we break up?" Kim Bobby pondered for 2 seconds, looking down at me with a smile. He reached out to smooth the ends of my hair, finally dropping the pretense. That playful voice rang in my ears, probably because I couldn't bear to let Nora Alcott suffer with me. At the beginning, being with Kim Bobby during the startup phase was indeed tough. We shared one steamed bun between the two of us. Back then, Kim Bobby rested his chin on my shoulder, whispering in my ear that everything would be all right. As he wished, things gradually improved. Kim Bobby soared, becoming a hot new figure in the industry. Everyone sought to curry favor with him. With all of this, he no longer needed to maintain the gradually fading affection between us. He could do whatever he wanted, including rectifying past regrets. Kim Bobby's voice wasn't loud, but everyone heard him clearly. A moment of silence fell. Kim Bobby's gaze landed on me, as if bestowing a blessing. He spoke. "But don't worry, as long as you're obedient, I'll always keep the position of Mrs. reserved for you." Kim Bobby's voice wasn't loud, but everyone heard him clearly. The entire room fell silent. Many people secretly raised their heads to see my reaction. I didn't say a word. After taking back the cake from Kim Bobby, I turned and left the room. Behind me, Kim Bobby chuckled with satisfaction. Kim Bobby kept his word, and soon Nora Alcott was brought back to the country. Their breakup back then had been quite unpleasant. Nora Alcott left in anger, and Kim Bobby didn't try to keep her. That impulsive action in youth became a lasting regret. Kim Bobby happily said that luckily he now had the ability to fix it. The day Nora Alcott returned was particularly lively. With red eyes, she stood in front of Kim Bobby, defiantly looking up at him. "Didn't you say you never wanted to see me again?" People around her began to interject. "That's obviously just something said in anger." "Yeah, the handmade gift you gave to Kim Bobby back then is still in his cabinet. Whoever touches it will get into trouble." Kim Bobby ruffled her hair, laughing lightly. "Then you don't want to see me either, right?" Nora Alcott was forced to retreat into his embrace. "What about Susanna Gissing? Do you love her?" Kim Bobby leaned in and silenced her with a kiss, mumbling, "What do you think?" After a long separation, Kim Bobby arranged for a whole city's worth of roses to be sent to Nora Alcott. Their relationship stirred up quite the commotion. I became the subject of conversation throughout the entire city. When Kim Bobby returned, he had red marks on his neck. He glanced at me lightly. "Still awake?" I nodded. "I couldn't get through to you on the phone, so I was waiting for you. You called." Kim Bobby frowned slightly. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through it, and finally found my number in the blacklist. Nora Alcott had unilaterally blocked me. Kim Bobby's eyes narrowed with a smile. "Her temper hasn't changed in all these years." His affectionate tone was like talking about a mischievous cat. I lowered my gaze. It had been a long time since I had seen Kim Bobby like this. In the past, when I made a mistake, Kim Bobby would shake his head helplessly, then smile and clean up the mess. But 6 years was too long, enough to wear down a lot of enthusiasm. After pulling out my number, he looked at me and asked, "What do you need me for?" "For our wedding anniversary next week. I hope you won't be absent." Kim Bobby was taken aback for 2 seconds before he realized. "Are you still doing those charity events?" Yes, the charity project to support children in mountainous areas had been something I wanted to do even before I met Kim Bobby. It was finally starting to show results. But it wasn't enough. The anniversary banquet itself wasn't important. What mattered was the charity sponsorship project organized around this opportunity. The resources I could secure on my own were limited, so Kim Bobby couldn't miss it. This was also why I had put up with Kim Bobby until now. I wanted to use his influence to amplify this ongoing project to more people. "All right." Kim Bobby nodded, pulling something out of the cabinet and saying, "I probably won't be going home for a while. You can find me at the office if anything comes up." I nodded. "Okay." Halfway out the door, Kim Bobby suddenly turned back, his gaze fixed on my face, asking curiously, "Susanna Gissing, don't you care at all?" "Care about what?" "Care about his entanglement with Nora Alcott? Or care about how much he still loved me now?" I looked at him with curiosity. "If I did care, would you change?" Kim Bobby slowly smiled, gazing at me, and softly uttered 2 words, "No." Kim Bobby was certain I couldn't bear to leave the gradually improving life, couldn't bear to give up the title of wife, and couldn't bear to leave him while I was being ridiculed by the people of the city. A friend once asked Kim Bobby this question: "You promised to marry Susanna Gissing, aren't you afraid she'll be angry and not come back?" Kim Bobby sat on the couch, laughing carelessly. He said, "Now that I've endured the hardships, no matter how excessive I get, she won't leave me." He was particularly confident that I wouldn't leave. I didn't know how he appeased Nora Alcott, nor did I want to care. All I had was the current donation project making me particularly anxious. With the rainy season approaching, too many accidents could happen in the mountainous areas. Not just now. There would be plenty of places needing funding in the future. There wasn't enough publicity. It needed to be known by more people. But the more I cared about something, the less I could obtain it. Nora Alcott didn't want to let me have my way, so she played the spoiled child, and insisted on holding the welcome banquet on the day of my anniversary with Kim Bobby. I went to Kim Bobby's company. Actually, I didn't often visit his office, but as soon as I walked in, I noticed many people secretly sizing me up. The company was buzzing with the news that Kim Bobby's first love had returned, and that I was soon to be discarded. Inside the company, I even saw Nora Alcott. Now, she had become Kim Bobby's personal secretary. She seemed to know why I came to the office, and deliberately brought up the matter in front of Kim Bobby, insisting he agree. Kim Bobby leaned against the desk and glanced at me. This event couldn't have any surprises. Right now, I didn't care about Kim Bobby's thoughts, but I still needed him. I walked over, looked up at him, and softened my tone. "You know this is important to me. Isn't it important to me?" Nora Alcott raised her voice, turning to Kim Bobby. "Kim Bobby, I told you I can only accept that I'm the only one by your side. I gave you time to handle things with Susanna Gissing, but this welcome banquet, I consulted a master, and it's auspicious. It has to be on that day." Nora Alcott was concerned about my presence, so she insisted on doing the opposite. She was particularly resolute, and Kim Bobby sighed softly. feeling a pang of sympathy. The ringing of the phone broke the stalemate. I answered it, as there were matters to handle in the mountains. Before leaving, I turned to take a deep look at him. Kim Bobby, don't make me really hate you. In the end, Kim Bobby agreed to come. I breathed a sigh of relief. On the day of the banquet, many media reporters were invited. The scene was set, and everything was ready. I kept glancing at the door, but the person I was waiting for was nowhere to be seen. The attendees had come mainly because of Kim Bobby's reputation, but as time passed and he remained absent, whispers began to circulate among the crowd. Is he really going to stand us up at this hour? I've heard she's Kim Bobby's white moonlight. What does Susanna Gissing have to compare? The crowd grew increasingly restless. To stabilize the situation, I stepped forward and said, Kim Bobby is delayed with something. Please bear with us. Before I could finish, my phone suddenly vibrated. Not just me. Many people present received a message. Kim Bobby had organized a welcome party for Nora Alcott today. The news broke at just the wrong moment. Instantly, many eyes turned to me, as if I were a clown performing. My heart sank. Taking a deep breath, I stubbornly opened my phone. I received a video from Kim Bobby. In the video, he was personally setting up the welcome party for Nora Alcott. His profile was focused and serious. It was clear that the video was sent from Nora Alcott using his phone. Meanwhile, in the hall, several reporters were waiting for the banquet to start, but as word spread that Kim Bobby wouldn't be coming, many began to find excuses to leave and head to Nora Alcott's side. Sorry, Susanna Gissing, something came up at work. I need to go. I have something urgent too. Without Kim Bobby, this banquet lost its meaning. I stood there, watching the gradually emptying venue, feeling a chill settle deep in my chest. Even my fingertips began to feel numb. Kim Bobby had lied to me. From the very beginning, he never intended to come. In the end, only less than a fifth of the guests remained at the banquet. A few of Kim Bobby's friends stayed. They had decent relations with me, and managed to forcefully keep a few people. I lowered my eyes and took a few deep breaths to regain my composure. Without Kim Bobby, I decided to get straight to the point. Even if only one person was present, I still couldn't give up hope. Using the media's momentum, I promoted this charitable event. It wasn't until the event was over that I received a call from Kim Bobby. I answered but didn't speak. He was probably nearing the end of his own activities and hadn't heard my voice. Kim Bobby chuckled. Why aren't you speaking? Are you upset with me about today's situation? I lowered my eyes, trying to decipher the meaning behind his words. He knew how important this banquet was to me, yet he still had the audacity to stand me up. There was not a trace of guilt in his tone. Of course, in Kim Bobby's eyes, I probably wouldn't ever leave him. Just like he said, no matter how much he overstepped, it didn't matter. He could flaunt around with Nora Alcott, and it wouldn't matter to me. He was confident I couldn't live without him. As night fell, I stared at the empty banquet hall, and suddenly felt a wave of relief wash over me. This time, I truly had no reason to stay by his side. On the other end of the phone, Kim Bobby continued talking, his tone light and airy, as if soothing a pet beside him. I know this event is very important to you. I'll make it up to you, okay? You just wanted to do charity for that mountainous area. Next week, I'll compensate. Kim Bobby. I raised my head and suddenly interrupted him. After a brief silence, I said calmly, let's break up. There was an eerie silence on Kim Bobby's side. Before he could speak, I hung up the phone. When I looked up, I noticed it had quieted down around me, and Kim Bobby's friends were all staring at me. They had helped a lot today, so I sincerely thanked them. Their faces changed dramatically. Sister-in-law, you're not joking, are you? You really want to break up with Kim Bobby? I nodded gently. This is just Kim Bobby's obsession. If you get through this period, sister-in-law, don't act impulsively. Their expressions were complex. I understood their meaning. After enduring so many years of hardship alongside him, they were reluctant to see me make sacrifices for his future benefit. I tilted my head to look at them. If I truly wanted wealth and status, I wouldn't have agreed to be with him when he was completely broke. Once I said this, they suddenly fell silent. I returned home and packed my things. My phone vibrated. Kim Bobby kept calling, but I simply blocked him. The next morning, I left the city for the mountains. The situation in the mountains was even worse than I had imagined. A heavy rain had made the already difficult paths even muddier. The old school was on the verge of collapse. The old village head hadn't slept all night, fatigue showing in his eyes as he stared at the muddy village, continuously puffing on a cigarette. Most of the labor force had gone out to work, leaving only the elderly and left behind children. When he saw me, he hurried over, wiping his hand on his clothes before extending it. Susanna Gissing, look at this. I focused on the mud and made up my mind. You can leave it to me. When I returned to Rong City, I realized that news of my breakup with Kim Bobby had spread like wildfire. Many media outlets tried to pry information from Kim Bobby. He smiled casually at the cameras, his words laced with mockery. Breakup. Would she? Someone keenly caught the key information. So, does that mean the recent breakup rumors are false? Susanna Gissing can't leave you, right? Kim Bobby said nothing, just chuckled. That day, the trending topic of whether I could leave Kim Bobby soared, but none of this mattered to me. After the heavy rain, the mountainous paths were even muddier, and road repairs needed to be prioritized. Taking advantage of the publicity, I launched a completely transparent donation campaign, with the groundwork laid from the last event. This one went relatively smoothly, despite some hiccups. However, it was clear that a significant portion of the attendees had come solely for the gossip surrounding me and Kim Bobby. They kept steering the conversation towards our relationship. Susanna Gissing, I heard you brought up the breakup. Is that true? If so, why is Kim Bobby so certain you won't leave? Are you really just acting, or playing hard to get? Can you answer that? I smiled at them. I report this event because I truly want to help those in need and do what I can. Perhaps you could put aside some unrelated questions for now and focus on the reality in the mountains. No matter how they questioned me, I never took the bait. With no leads, their enthusiasm waned. But suddenly, there was a gasp from the crowd. Many people looked up toward the door. At the entrance, a crowd had gathered, and someone was walking in with a smile. My eyelids twitched, and when I looked up, I happened to meet the gaze of the newcomer. Sure enough, Kim Bobby had arrived. This was the first time I had encountered Kim Bobby since the breakup. His presence instantly stirred up a buzz among the attendees, and excitement filled the air. Many eyes were on us, and the atmosphere was charged with gossip. I looked at him expressionlessly. I don't recall inviting Kim Bobby, but if you're here to donate, I'd be more than happy to welcome you. Kim Bobby raised an eyebrow slightly. He walked over to me, smiling warmly. Aren't you done causing a scene with me yet? His words were ambiguous, deliberately blurring the line of our relationship in front of everyone, as he intended. As soon as he finished speaking, someone couldn't help but ask, Kim Bobby, are you and Susanna Gissing not broken up? Break up. Kim Bobby laughed, his gaze lightly sweeping over me, confidently stating, she won't break up with me. His words implied that I couldn't live without him. Instantly, the way the crowd looked at me was laced with sarcasm, as if this was the only expected outcome. Meanwhile, on the live broadcast, comments began flooding the screen. Looks like the breakup rumors were probably just for publicity. Susanna Gissing waited this long. How could she bear to leave? Why make the breakup so public? Playing hard to get, I guess. Why do people always think so little of women? Once they're fed up, they'll definitely leave. If she can break up, I'll stand on my head and eat asterisk. Kim Bobby's smile deepened, clearly pleased with this outcome. My suggestion to break up didn't sit well with him. He had deliberately chosen this occasion to raise the question, showcasing to everyone that no matter how I acted out, I wouldn't truly leave him. He prepared a ring and placed it on my finger in front of everyone's gaze. His fingers gently brushed my face, and he cheerfully said, once you're done causing a fuss, come back obediently. I stared at the ring. It seemed Kim Bobby hadn't taken my previous words about breaking up seriously at all. Numerous cameras trained on us. This kind of high society gossip could easily become the hot topic tomorrow. Kim Bobby, as always, looked at me with a confident smile. For him, simply lowering himself to come here was giving me an out. How could I possibly refuse? I looked up at him. Kim Bobby, are you so sure I wouldn't leave you? Of course. Kim Bobby smiled gently, lowering his voice with curiosity. After enduring hardship, can you really go back to how things were? If you didn't hear what I said that day clearly, I don't mind repeating it here, I warned. Before I could finish, Kim Bobby suddenly grabbed my wrist. His smile faded slightly, and his tone carried a warning. You better think carefully before you speak. I pried open his fingers little by little. Right in front of him, I took off the ring and tossed it away. The ring rolled a couple of times, before stopping at his feet. I stared at him, speaking each word clearly. I said, we're breaking up, Kim Bobby. Do you hear me clearly now? My voice was neither loud nor soft, but when I finished, everyone's expressions changed, and the atmosphere froze. Kim Bobby stared at the ring at his feet, his expression darkening. He dropped his smile, his face turning frighteningly serious. What do you mean? Have you thought this through? Kim Bobby tightened his grip on my hand. Do you really want to break up with me? Kim Bobby was used to putting on a facade, and hadn't lost his composure in public for a long time. But at this moment, he was losing control. This lasted for a few seconds before he closed his eyes, forcefully suppressing his emotions. When he opened his eyes again, he regained some composure and said softly, Susanna Gissing, if you pick up the ring now, I can forgive your impulsiveness. I walked over and fixed my gaze on him. I stepped on the ring beneath my foot. Kim Bobby, I said firmly, we're really done. Many people looked at Kim Bobby, and he could no longer maintain his composure. His face twisted in anger. He tried to keep a shred of dignity, forcing a laugh at me. This was your idea, Susanna Gissing. I'll be waiting to see you come crawling back to beg me. I told Kim Bobby there would never be such a day. That night, Kim Bobby left without looking back. I ignored it and, after finishing my work there, took supplies to the mountains. The old village chief led the way, walking slightly hunched over, thanking me repeatedly as he spoke. Apparently, the old chief had spread the word. Every household was already waiting at their doorsteps, coming out to greet me without needing a knock. Children kept joining us, huffing and puffing as they helped along the way. Having raised enough funds, we didn't delay the road repairs for even a day, and the school also needed renovations. This would take some time, so I temporarily settled in the mountains. After the previous events, the area had gained some exposure, and I heard that teachers would soon come to volunteer. The children surrounded me, clearly in good spirits, sneaking wildflowers into my hands when I wasn't paying attention. I waved the wildflowers at them. Thank you. The girl ran off shyly, while a bolder boy shouted that there were many more to pick for me. I nodded in response. The night breeze was cool and pleasant, and I tilted my head back, enjoying the moment. After all those years with Kim Bobby, the intricacies of the circle I was in kept me on edge, but now I finally felt completely relaxed. After the breakup, many friends asked if I regretted it. I said I had no regrets. Kim Bobby was indeed talented, but I had never intended to rely on anyone to survive. Over the years, as Kim Bobby started his business, I had helped quite a bit. I held a portion of his company's shares, and even after breaking up, I would still receive a substantial annual dividend, enough to support my charitable activities. During this time, Kim Bobby didn't contact me at all. Instead, the news of our breakup became a popular topic of discussion among many. Some even bet on how long it would take before I couldn't help but turn back. Kim Bobby himself got involved directly. He cut off all my funds, betting I wouldn't last more than 3 months. I would obediently return. When his friends mentioned this to me, I felt no stir of emotion. Is that so? Then he might be disappointed. I had my own job and could support myself. The line fell silent for a few seconds before someone tentatively asked, Sister, you really don't plan to turn back? Why should I turn back? As soon as I finished speaking, a dry, familiar warning came through the phone. Susanna Gissing, there are limits to throwing a tantrum. It was a voice I knew well. I hadn't expected Kim Bobby to be nearby. Hearing his voice, I simply hung up. I heard that on that day, Kim Bobby was laughing when he suddenly kicked over the table. Everyone in the room exchanged glances, no one daring to speak. Kim Bobby's face was serious as he said, Call her back. One of his friends sighed, trying to persuade him. I think this time, she's determined to end it. Before he could finish, Kim Bobby grabbed him by the collar. Watch your words. He spoke with certainty. She won't leave me. Kim Bobby counted the days, waiting for me to turn back. He kept calling from different numbers, yet never said a word. But once I had made up my mind, there was no turning back. If Kim Bobby wanted to wait, let him wait. During this time, I grew closer to the children in the mountains. They didn't want me to feel bored, and would rush to play with me after school, sharing various funny stories to make me laugh. As we descended the mountain, it was slightly dark. A little girl ran over to me, as excited as ever. She told me that many people had come to the village today. There were teachers, kind-hearted people delivering supplies, and a handsome brother. Really? I shook the wildflowers in my hand, squinting at the sunset. That sounds lively. The handsome brother said he came here to find his first love. Sister, what's first love? Do you have one too? I was taken aback for a second, a familiar face flashing in my mind. Even after so long apart, that face remained clear. I nodded. Yes, he was a very proud person. Whoa, then you must really like him a lot. I patted her on the head, remaining silent. Suddenly, a little boy poked my arm. He leaned closer and whispered, Sister, that person in front has been secretly looking at you. He brought a lot of things today. He's the kind-hearted person delivering supplies. Following his gaze, I looked over at the sunset, where Kim Bobby had removed his usual suit jacket and was standing still, quietly watching me. I frowned and turned to leave. Kim Bobby strode over to block my path, frowning. It's been a month, and you're still not done making a scene. Heh. I was genuinely curious. How did you figure out I was making a scene? Kim Bobby chuckled, looking around the mountains before meeting my gaze. As long as you come back to me, and soften your stance, I can help you with whatever you want. Still speaking in that condescending tone, I shook my head. Forget it. Kim Bobby's expression darkened. He looked up at the evening glow, speaking softly. I said I'd keep the position of Mrs. Sure you can make a scene, but know when to stop. What good does sulking do you? I smiled. Forget it, Susanna Gissing. Kim Bobby was unhappy, and that made me feel quite pleased. He turned to look at me, suddenly recalling our earlier conversation with the children. Proud person, first love, you seem happy when you mention him. I hummed a tune, not replying, but Kim Bobby was particularly fixated on the question. Why didn't I know you had an unforgettable first love? I laughed. Is that strange? Kim Bobby, you're not the only one with a white moonlight. So what if I think of my white moonlight? Kim Bobby looked at me and chuckled. So, you're still upset with Nora Alcott for saying those hurtful things? A headache hit me. No matter what I said, Kim Bobby thought I was angry, and breaking up with him, because I loved him too much. But in reality, my feelings for him had long since faded. I lost my patience and called the group of kids to interrupt our conversation. Before leaving, Kim Bobby looked at me with confidence. I'll give you time to think. Susanna Gissing, don't really anger me. I felt speechless and questioned how I had spent so many years with such a person. Not long after, the children suddenly started making noise. The handsome brother is here. The handsome brother is here. Curiosity piqued. I looked up, only to be startled by a pair of familiar brows and eyes. In that moment of eye contact, his brows slightly raised, forming an amused curve. I froze in place, feeling as if my scalp had exploded. I hadn't expected the handsome brother they mentioned to be Bradley Mallory. Years had passed since I last saw him. I hadn't imagined running into Bradley Mallory here. After a long pause, I found my voice. What a coincidence. Not a coincidence. Bradley Mallory stared at me, his smile indifferent. I knew you would come. The kids dispersed with good sense. In the quiet of the night, it was suddenly just the two of us left. After such a long separation, there were no tears or deep reflections. Bradley Mallory coolly looked in the direction Kim Bobby had left. After breaking up with me, it seems you haven't been doing so well. That guy Kim Bobby, with his perfect image, brought his first love back to the country. Can you really tolerate that? Susanna Gissing, 3 days apart makes a person see differently. Bradley Mallory's tongue had remained sharp after all these years. I couldn't take it anymore. I say, enough with the kicking a person when they're down. Okay. Bradley Mallory fell silent. This relationship was indeed less than glamorous, and I didn't want to discuss it. When I turned to leave, he suddenly pulled me into his arms. His grip on my wrist was tight, and as I looked up, an unexpected kiss landed on my lips, a warm touch, light and gentle. Instinctively, I struggled, but Bradley Mallory tightened his grip on my wrist even more. With a mischievous bite, his fingers wove through my hair, deepening the kiss gradually. It wasn't gentle. It felt like he was merging all the emotions from our years apart into this moment. Our breaths intertwined, and my heartbeat echoed in the night, amplified infinitely. I stood still, listening to his voice murmur near my ear. Is it real? What? Bradley Mallory lowered his gaze to me, his voice slightly hoarse. What you just said about missing someone, is it real? Since you're thinking of him, why didn't you come to me? My mind buzzed. He had indeed overheard everything from my conversation with Kim Bobby just now. I had even forgotten the reasons for our breakup years ago. There wasn't anything dramatic about it. Bradley Mallory was, at his core, an extremely proud person. Neither of us backed down. I didn't turn around. As graduation approached, we parted ways like most couples do. His direct questioning now was rather unlike him. A burning pain flared at the corner of my mouth. I remained silent while Bradley Mallory patiently stared at me, as if he was determined to extract an answer. Does it really matter? I asked. It matters, Bradley Mallory replied seriously, devoid of any hint of jest. It's very important. If you still think of me, then my path to reconciliation will be much smoother. I ran away. I fled in a panic. Bradley Mallory's gaze was too earnest, and my mind went blank under such scrutiny. But the next day, he showed up in front of me as if nothing had happened. Whatever I did, he would rush to help. This went on for several days, and the kids couldn't help but gossip. Brother, do you like the pretty sister? Bradley Mallory didn't hide it. Yeah, she's single. I'm single. I'm pursuing her again. His boldness shocked me. I hurried over and covered his mouth. Can you please not say that around the kids? Bradley Mallory looked at me innocently. But they all say we're a perfect match. I turned to see a row of little heads behind the rock discussing. So his first love is a pretty sister. I said it before. The handsome brother must like the pretty sister. Yeah, my grandma also said this is called a couple's resemblance. How do these kids know so much? During this time, Bradley Mallory stayed right behind me, helping with everything I did. In my days, I felt like we had never truly broken up. I had initially met Bradley Mallory during an activity in the mountains. We were drawn to each other because of our similar aspirations. Bradley Mallory never concealed his affection. In college, everyone knew he had a girlfriend named Susanna Gissing. So, when we broke up, many friends expressed their regret. Bradley Mallory was well regarded in this mountainous area. Everyone, young and old, spoke highly of him. He arrived here before I did and had already started doing a lot. The kids appeared silent on the surface, but secretly cheered for Bradley Mallory. Handsome brother, I'm rooting for you. Bradley Mallory raised an eyebrow. Susanna Gissing, what about you? What? Are you rooting for me? After so many years apart, why do you suddenly want to get back together? What if I said I've been thinking about you for many years? Would you believe me? I laughed. Are you just waiting for me to break up? Bradley Mallory stopped smiling and softly replied, I swallowed hard and could no longer laugh. During the time Bradley Mallory was beside me, the most frequently asked question was whether I considered him. He even brought up Nora Alcott. If Kim Bobby can find his white moonlight, why can't you? I'm willing to be your tool for revenge. Even as a tool, I'm willing. How can the difference be so great if we're both talking about white moonlight? The world is cold. Some people can be welcomed back to their country, while I'd have to cling to certain people without any consideration. The little kids around us had all been won over by him, gathering around to repeat, think about it, sister, think about it. I was at a loss for words, but I couldn't deny it. Bradley Mallory's presence did lift my spirits considerably. I enjoyed the breeze and realized I wasn't resistant to him. Just as Bradley Mallory said, since we're both single, we might as well follow our hearts. I never turned back. And Kim Bobby said he wanted to give Nora Alcott a proper title. Many waiting for results suddenly erupted in chatter, saying I had gone too far this time, and had completely annoyed Kim Bobby. When Kim Bobby called from a new number while I wasn't around, Bradley Mallory answered. Kim Bobby's voice was low. Susanna Gissing, I'm giving you one last chance to back down. If you don't come back within 3 days, I will." Before he could finish, Bradley Mallory suddenly laughed. "Oh, good news. Finally, all the garbage is piled together. Forget the 3 days. Just lock it down immediately." After saying that, he hung up decisively. I was confused, turning back while picking wildflowers. Who was on the phone? Bradley Mallory came over to help me pick flowers and casually said, "A spam call." Oh, as I looked down again, Bradley Mallory suddenly grabbed my wrist. He had crafted a ring from a leaf, and placed it on my finger. I realized that he had been busy, making this thing while sitting on the rock just now. I teased lightly, "What's this? Are you confessing?" That's a bit lacking in sincerity. No sooner had I said that than Bradley Mallory pulled out a delicate box from somewhere. When he opened it, a particularly beautiful diamond ring lay quietly inside. I froze, watching Bradley Mallory drop the grass ring, and carefully slide the diamond ring onto my middle finger, made my previously touched fingers go numb, and my heart skipped a beat. "When did you prepare this?" The ring fit perfectly, custom made. Bradley Mallory smiled. "If I'm going to pursue someone, I have to be sincere." The calmness I had maintained for years suddenly shattered. My heart began to thump vigorously in my chest. Thump, thump. I tightened my fingers, turning my gaze away. "I don't think I have anything worth your long-lasting affection." Bradley Mallory looked at the mountainside. "I discovered this place just a little earlier than you did. You acted faster than me. Before you came, whenever it rained, the dirt paths were muddy, and going out for school was a problem. Now the roads are fixed, and the school is going to be renovated. Because of your efforts, more people are paying attention to this place. You're helping more than just these people. I've been following all the charitable activities you've done over the years. That's one thing you've never changed. Susanna Gissing, you're the only one who hasn't realized just how wonderful you are." As the sun set in the west, the evening breeze brushed against my face. The way Bradley Mallory looked at me was gentle and lingering. Compelled by some unseen force, I grabbed his collar and leaned in to kiss him. Bradley Mallory suddenly froze. I closed my eyes and didn't wait to speak. Suddenly, a furious roar erupted not far away. "What are you doing?" I flinched and turned to see Kim Bobby rushing over, looking weary and disheveled. Kim Bobby's sudden appearance caught me completely off guard. His gaze fixated on me and Bradley Mallory, struggling to suppress the emotions welling up inside. "Susanna Gissing, who is this person? What are you doing? With those 2 eggs under your brows, all you can do is blink and not see. What do you think we're doing? Can't you tell?" Bradley Mallory maintained a stoic face, looking as if our good moment was interrupted. Whenever he was in a bad mood, he would be particularly sharp-tongued. Kim Bobby's face turned pale with anger. "What's your identity? Who allowed you to get close to her?" Bradley Mallory laughed, his amusement evident. In front of him, his fingers gently wrapped around my waist. Then he leaned down, under Kim Bobby's watchful gaze. He lowered his head and kissed me, a light touch, just a taste. After enraging Kim Bobby, he poked my waist and quietly asked, "So, what's my identity?" I regained my composure and took a deep breath. Maybe it was the atmosphere that felt just right. I held Bradley Mallory's hand, and looked up at Kim Bobby. "I'll introduce him. My boyfriend." Kim Bobby's face immediately darkened. He raised his hand, ready to pull me away from Bradley Mallory, but I quickly stepped back, preventing him from touching me. "What do you mean?" Kim Bobby probably never thought I wouldn't turn back. A qualified ex should act like they're dead. "Got it. Ex." Kim Bobby laughed angrily, his gaze sweeping over Bradley Mallory. "You broke up with me because of him? Or are you deliberately putting on a show because of the Nora Alcott situation?" Kim Bobby's voice grew cold. "I told you there should be limits to your antics. Susanna Gissing, you've really crossed the line this time." "Antics?" I was puzzled. "Where do you see me acting up? I told you long ago that we were over. It was you who didn't believe it, right? Besides," I paused, scanning his furious face, "what makes you think I have to be with you?" With my words, the smile on Kim Bobby's face gradually faded. His gaze scrutinized my face, trying to find a hint of jest. Unfortunately, there wasn't any. But what Kim Bobby excelled at was self-deception. He furrowed his brows and asked me, "How long are you planning to keep this up?" Are you upset that I gave Nora Alcott a title? As long as you come back with me now, I can take that back. The position of Mrs. will always be yours. I held on to Bradley Mallory and walked past him, with a blank expression. Don't think about taking me back. First, go to the hospital and get a brain CT. You might be seriously ill. After descending the mountain, Bradley Mallory stared at our linked hands, and asked if my earlier action was a deliberate performance in front of Kim Bobby. I shook my head. You should know I never joke about other people's feelings. Under Bradley Mallory's gaze, I looked up at him and softly said, let's start over, Bradley Mallory. With the matters in the mountains settled, many were waiting to see my misfortune back home. Kim Bobby always thought I was putting on a show. He waited for me to turn back and seek reconciliation, sending me a message saying that if I agreed to come to tonight's dinner, he would immediately get back together with me. That night, quite a few friends came over. As I pushed the door open, discussions erupted in the room. Asterisk, she actually came, asterisk. Asterisk, Kim Bobby wasn't wrong. She really can't bear to leave. A smile gradually spread across Kim Bobby's face as he looked up at me. Susanna Gissing, I knew you. Before he could finish, Kim Bobby suddenly froze. He was staring at the man behind me, and the rest of his words got stuck in his throat. The entire venue went silent. I held hands with Bradley Mallory and walked up to Kim Bobby. Kim Bobby's gaze fell on the couple's diamond ring we were wearing, and his expression darkened. I got straight to the point. I'm here today to tell you for the last time, we've broken up. I'm not acting, and I've never thought about going back. From the moment I said that, I meant it sincerely. Whether you believe me or not is your business. I don't care. I've started a new life, so please don't bother me anymore. I hadn't planned to come, but Bradley Mallory insisted on me making this trip, and brought himself along. Kim Bobby didn't speak. He was staring at the ring, silent for a moment, then looked at me, his voice very soft. Susanna Gissing, what's this? This ring was also prepared by Kim Bobby for today. I heard he was genuinely hoping to reconcile with me, as he had never considered that I would leave. Bradley Mallory kindly lifted his arm, seemingly wanting him to see better. Take it off, Kim Bobby ordered, his eyelids taut as he looked at me, suppressing his anger. You can only wear the one I gave you. Bradley Mallory and I murmured, what a psycho. Let's get out of here. Take it off. Don't make me say it a third time. As I turned to leave, Kim Bobby suddenly stood up and grabbed my wrist. That night, Kim Bobby, who had always been incredibly proud, got teary-eyed in front of everyone, but he still forced a cold smile. You think I'll believe you just because you say it's not acting? How could you suddenly fall in love with someone else? This pathetic excuse, do you really think I'm that foolish? He gritted his teeth, each word clear. No matter what you say, Susanna Gissing, I won't allow you to leave. I was just about to speak. Bradley Mallory rolled up his sleeves, and suddenly grabbed Kim Bobby by the collar, throwing a punch. Kim Bobby stumbled back a few steps. Enraged, the scene erupted into chaos. When I came to my senses, Kim Bobby was already sitting on the ground. He was furious, blood at the corner of his mouth. Bradley Mallory stood still. He lowered his head, his eyes cold as he looked at the disheveled Kim Bobby, his words laced with sarcasm. Look clearly, your white moonlight is back. What's it to you? The words, white moonlight, struck Kim Bobby like a blow, leaving him stunned. He froze for several seconds, then slowly raised his eyes, his gaze landing on Bradley Mallory. White moonlight. So when you said you missed your first love, you weren't joking? Kim Bobby looked at me in disbelief, his voice dry. You two got back together. Kim Bobby ended up in the hospital, half from being hit, half from the anger. I suspected that Bradley Mallory insisted I attend this gathering just to have a legitimate reason to beat him up. After that night, news about me and him spread. While I wasn't paying attention, Bradley Mallory directly posted our couple photo on my Weibo account. By the time I noticed, the comment section was already blowing up. Asterisk, what's going on? Isn't she just pretending to act with Kim Bobby? She's serious. Asterisk, no way huh? Asterisk, what's there to be surprised about? I, Susanna Gissing, am beautiful and kind-hearted, and I've helped so many people. I've made the news. Okay, Not everyone deserves to be treated like a rotten cucumber. Asterisk, I've said it before. Susanna Gissing is serious about breaking up. When is that guy who ate sheet upside down going to broadcast again? I glanced at the man on the couch, engrossed in peeling an orange for me, and asked, "What's going on?" Bradley Mallory handed me the peeled orange, shrugging innocently. A sensible man should learn to give himself a title. I couldn't help but laugh in anger. Later, someone dug up that Bradley Mallory and I had already been together since college. His confession back then caused a stir throughout the school, and many of our classmates shared old sweet memories. Some also asked how we suddenly broke up after being so loving. To this question, Bradley Mallory personally stepped in. In the dead of night, he wrote a lengthy response of over 1,000 words, explaining that at that time, we were both young and reckless, and we missed out on so much. Some people pointedly tried to sow discord, asking if he really didn't mind my past with Kim Bobby. Bradley Mallory replied that he had thought about this issue many times, and his only feeling was regret. If he hadn't let go back then, I wouldn't have met Kim Bobby, and wouldn't have been hurt. Asterisk, life doesn't offer many 6 years. Those who have their hearts betrayed should not be blamed or discussed. They did nothing wrong, and they have the freedom and right to pursue happiness again. Asterisk, if Kim Bobby had treated her well, I wouldn't have had the chance to appear in front of her. Asterisk, Susanna Gissing has always been wonderful. Being able to reconcile with her is always me aiming high. Later, people also noticed that every mountainous area I had visited, Bradley Mallory later went alone. As I scrolled through these posts, my nose tingled with sorrow, an unfamiliar sadness enveloping me. I never thought that someone like me could be so passionately liked for so many years. Bradley Mallory's fingers tangled in my hair, comforting me with a chuckle. "Don't cry, Before he could finish, I leaned in and kissed him. Bradley Mallory was taken aback, shocked for a moment, but then smiled as he looked down and wrapped his arms around my waist. In the silent night, the atmosphere was just right. His fingers wove through my hair, holding me tightly as if wanting to embed me in his embrace. Our clothes slipped to the floor. Skin against the cold surface made me shiver, and I pushed him to the bed. The rest of the words got stuck on my lips. I closed my eyes, feeling his fingers roam over every nerve in my body. The night sea was turbulent, just like the feelings Bradley Mallory had buried deep in his heart for years. Waves crashed one after another, leaving little space to breathe. Lost in the moment, I let go of the rhythm completely, drowning in it, suppressing the breaths at my lips. Bradley Mallory leaned in close to my ear, speaking wickedly, "I want to hear." As soon as he finished speaking, he exerted a bit of pressure. I gasped. My face flushed as I buried it in the sheets, feeling that Bradley Mallory was so bad. At that time, Kim Bobby had announced he would give Nora Alcott the status of a legitimate girlfriend. After Nora Alcott happily spread the news everywhere, Kim Bobby backed out. He told Nora Alcott that he had changed his mind, although he had once liked Nora Alcott. That was in the past. Time passed. Perhaps there were regrets, but after obtaining something, he realized it was no longer the feeling it once was. He said the person he wanted to marry wasn't her. To put it bluntly, it's just his nature. Nora Alcott smashed everything in Kim Bobby's living room, her eyes red as she asked, "Then who is Susanna Gissing? What am I to you during this time?" Kim Bobby didn't answer. After quietly watching her smash everything, he took out a card. "You agreed back then, merely for this, right?" Nora Alcott's expression froze. After crying and making a fuss for a while, she finally picked up the card and left. When I heard about this, I suddenly remembered what Kim Bobby had whispered in my ear at the beginning. Asterisk, maybe it's because I didn't want to let Nora Alcott suffer with me. I suddenly found it very ironic. Selfish people tend to embellish themselves. The one they loved the most from beginning to end was always themselves. Later, Bradley Mallory proposed to me. The ceremony was especially extravagant. Flowers filled the city, and fireworks lit up the sky. That day, I received countless blessings. Because of my actions over the years, I unexpectedly gained a large number of fans. There were so many messages in my inbox that I couldn't get through them all. Tears welled in my eyes. I never imagined I would be liked by so many people. Kim Bobby purchased a limited edition necklace for a high price at an auction. It was something I had long desired. He handed the necklace to me, but I refused to take it, saying it was dirty. Kim Bobby's hand froze in mid-air. He looked at me, his eyes filled with loneliness. After a long time, he forced a pained smile. If it weren't for Nora Alcott, would you still choose to leave? I didn't answer these meaningless questions. As I turned to leave, I heard Kim Bobby call out to me from behind. His voice was slightly choked. Susanna Gissing, have you really thought it through? Don't you want me anymore? I scoffed internally. Selfish people are always good at acting. Pretending to be deeply affectionate to fool me is fine, but just don't fool yourself. Later, Kim Bobby went a bit crazy, obsessively wanting to take me back home. Of course, that was impossible. He lost a tooth after being hit by Bradley Mallory. When my wedding date with Bradley Mallory approached, I encountered Kim Bobby again. He asked me, will there be no chance to see each other again? I quietly looked at him, saying nothing. Bradley Mallory came over and took my hand. Responding to him, he looked at Kim Bobby, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Not at all. Of course, there will be chances to meet. Remember to come on our wedding day. I'll arrange for you to sit with the dog. When the wedding happened, Kim Bobby couldn't make it either. I heard he fell down the stairs and broke his leg. Both legs. In fact, when this news reached Bradley Mallory, he couldn't stop smiling all day. He acted as if he was still worried when he saw me. Seriously, I even found a dog for him. I laughed, standing on my tiptoes to kiss him on the lips. It's his bad luck. Bradley Mallory returned the kiss, his fingers gradually sliding up from my waist. I had the foresight to press down on his restless fingers. I'm really tired today. It's fine. Bradley Mallory held my wrist, kissing me as he murmured, let the little one serve you. Do you dare to be rebellious? Bradley Mallory's kisses descended from above. Punish me by loving you forever.